I can't see a world in which I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point. And the things that they're going to miss is, well, everything. You know, I love my country. I always have done, despite what some people in that country have done.
6 a.m. on the 14th of March, and we are on the Freedom flight. We are leaving Canada and we are headed to Los Angeles.
So, you know, I miss the UK. I miss parts of the UK, of course I do. And I think that it's really quite sad that I won't be able to show, you know, my children my homeland.
And I've said this before on my channel, Harry and Meghan, I think, bother so many of us and get under so many of our skins because they really, really mess with our sense of justice. When you have no moral compass, when you have no inner conscience, when you have no sense of shame, okay? That's how you're able to just march back into the UK at this point, Harry and Meghan. But remember, again, they are their own worst enemies. Give them enough rope to hang themselves and they will eventually hang themselves. They're going to do something to trip up because everything that they told us that drove them out of the UK, was it all a lie? Or did they just kind of come to the realization that, oh, you know, it's not that bad, we can come back? Both scenarios make them look like hypocritical idiots. In the exceptionally unlikely event that ill fortune should befall both the King and the Prince of Wales, this would now mean that Harry would serve as regent until such time as Prince George turned 18. Why is this happening? Why does it always seem like the wicked prosper no matter what? Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jennifer. I am so happy to be back with you guys. It's been a hot minute. I know I've been away from the channel for a bit. As many of you know, many of you may not know, I just completed my second international move in a little under 12 months. My family just relocated from Germany back to the US. We were in Germany for a year. It's a lot. It is a lot to move a family of 5. And we just basically had to start from scratch once we got back to our house. A lot going on. We didn't have furniture. We had to wait for our furniture to come back from storage on the East Coast. It's just been crazy, you guys. But I thank you so much for giving me the grace and the patience to just kind of, you know, get everything in my life sorted. As you can see, my background, it's just me on the floor in my bedroom. I don't have my setup. I don't have a lot of my furniture, you guys. I don't have my desk, but we're just gonna go with it, okay? I'm just so happy to be back here with you guys, especially to discuss this. And it's weird. I feel like we're in a therapy group together. We've been through so much together talking about the Duke and Duchess of Delusion over this last almost 2 years on my channel. It's still almost 24 hours after this news broke yesterday, exclusively in the Telegraph and the Sun, and now it's all over. But ever since this news broke, it has to so many of us out here in the royal watching space. You know, I talk about other things on my channel, but I do talk a lot about the royal family. So listening to this news that Harry and Meghan are now officially relocating back to the UK and are enrolling their 2 children in British schools, it just feels like a gut punch. I mean, let's get real. That's exactly what it feels like. It feels like the ultimate walking back of all of their lies, all of their betrayals, but it's not even a walk back that feels like there's some type of justice in it. There's no apology. There's nothing. It almost feels like, you know, they were allowed to leave the palace, smash everything in there on their way out, and now they're coming back, relocating back as if nothing ever happened. And I've said this before on my channel, Harry and Meghan, I think, bother so many of us and get under so many of our skins because they really, really mess with our sense of justice. They really, really mess with our sense of duty, propriety, respect. They just mess with so much of what we feel is important and what holds relationships and society together. They have absolutely no accountability. They are the king and queen of hypocrisy. They lie, in my opinion. They omit things, they tell half-truths, they spin yarns, they do everything they can to divide and destroy, and yet, again, no accountability. There's never a moment to stop, to pause, to think about what they've done, how possibly what they have said and what they have done might affect others. There's never any of that. It's always, how in any given situation have I been made to feel a victim, and how can I complain about it to the effect that I can make sure that I benefit from that complaining and from that constant self-victimization. It's just so unbelievably infuriating and nerve-wracking to hear this news now for all of those reasons. So I hear this news, and the first thing I can think of, the very, very first thing I can think of is Meghan Markle in that poop hat. When was that? 2017? So there was 2 Sandringham walks that she made with Harry, 2017 and 2018. And that's the very first thing I thought of was, okay, it's coming. We're going to get walks at Sandringham at Christmas. We're going to get Harry working his charities like Well Child, like Invictus. We're going to have Meghan tagging along, of course, on all of those outings. And then slowly but surely, we're going to see them being invited to more and more family events, both private, I would assume, and public as well. Things like Ascot, I'm sure eventually we're going to see them. Obviously, when Catherine holds her annual Christmas concert at Westminster Abbey, you know she's going to be a class act, and she is going to invite Harold and Meghan there. And, you know, rightly so, we should expect nothing less of William and Catherine, and we will get to them later on in the video. But yeah, that's all I thought of was, here we go again, here we go again. She's going to be showing up. And I was even thinking, I wonder if her style is going to start changing, right? I wonder how she's exactly going to be transitioning from, you know, she thinks she's effortlessly chic and cool. I think she wears clothes that are baggy, wrinkled, and ill-fitting 99.9% of the time. But I think it's going to be interesting to watch her kind of like transform herself, so to speak, back into this British royal family member, where she's going to be wearing clothes obviously more suited to the environment and the climate, all that. But that's going to be very interesting to see, because remember, she told us Britain was very stifling for her. She could never express her individuality. She had to wear pantyhose, you guys. Okay, pantyhose. So all of that, that's coming. So yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Her and Harry slowly but surely insinuating themselves right back, rubbing up against William and Catherine. We all know how her and Harry operates, and particularly Meghan. It's this slow motion crawl, slowly, deliberately back into the public eye, regardless of what they've said about UK and the Commonwealth, regardless of what they said about individual royal family members. They're going to make sure that they insinuate themselves back in there no matter what they've claimed in the past. Again, the ultimate in hypocrisy. And if you think that I'm reading too much into this, just look at what the media is reporting. Outlets like The Telegraph, like People magazine. People magazine has officially stated, and I have my notes right here, that while Harry will not return to official royal duties, the move signals a major new chapter. And then also in The Telegraph, the sentence that is just sticking in everyone's craw, and rightfully so, is the one that's saying, you know, there are no current plans for Harry and Meghan to resume their roles as working royals. So that is very, very telling in the wording of that. No current plans. So what does that tell you? That doesn't tell you that there is no possible in-way in the future. No. It's saying just right now, they're not planning on doing it. Basically, they have leeway and probably Charles's permission to go ahead and slide right back into those royal roles. And I think that is what is infuriating everybody on both sides of the Atlantic, who have literally had it up to hear with these grifters. I don't even work in PR, and I know that that wording, no current plans, that's incredibly telling. It is a massive and deliberate loophole. It's not never, it's not now, but it's a possibility in the future, and yeah, it's likely. And they think that we don't see right through this. Charles thinks that we're all so blindly stupid that he didn't know about this. Outlets are reporting that he wasn't made aware of Harry and Meghan's plans until this past Sunday, August 16th. We'll talk a little bit about that. I firmly do not believe that. I think that Charles absolutely knew. And I think actually in the background for I don't know how many years, he has communicated to his son that if you want to come back, the door is always open for you. Mind you, Harry didn't want to come back because all of his conditions weren't met, because he wanted to make sure that he got his 24/7 security no matter where he was in the world. He wanted this, he wanted that. And if he didn't get it, he was just going to sue the pants off his father's government. He was going to make sure he got everything that he felt he deserved. And the king just allowed this to happen. And make no mistake about it, had the king pulled these titles right when he assumed the throne, none of this would be happening. Because as long as they remained on the royal website, as long as those titles were not stripped, as long as Harry was still made a counselor of state, as long as all those things were kept in place, Harry always knew in the back of his mind that if things got bad enough in the US for him and Meghan, that he always had an out, that there was always going to be a loophole that he could jump back through to reassert himself and shove him and his wife back in the faces of the UK public. So let's just call this what this is, okay, guys? When you have no moral compass, when you have no inner conscience, when you have no sense of shame, okay? And that is something sorely lacking in today's society, no sense of shame. That's how you're able to just march back into the UK at this point, Harry and Meghan. That's how you're able to just waltz back into the UK as if nothing ever happened, as if you didn't spend close to 7 years pointing the finger at not only the UK itself, but at her husband, Harry's family, calling them horrible, evil, vile racists who basically have wanted them dead. Harry and Meghan have spoken at length about mental health struggles while living in Britain. The British press drove them to such mental anguish. Her, pregnant with her first child, was driven to almost unalive herself because she couldn't take the pressure of the relentless, horrible, vile, evil, rotten, racist British media. He doesn't know what to do. He's saying that, he felt his hands were tied. The institution's telling both of them that they can't get help because it's not good for the optics, which is a bunch of garbage. He was involved in mental health charities with William and Catherine, the three of them, long before Meghan ever came in on the scene. And he had also received therapy himself because he talks about that in Spare before he even met Meghan. So for him to spin this yarn to us that he had no idea what to do, his wife was curled up in a ball on the floor, ready to unalive herself. And he's just, hands in the air, doesn't know what to do. I mean, it's such garbage. So if you have no sense of shame, if you have no moral compass, that's how you're able to waltz back in as if none of these horrible lies and omissions and half-truths and all these things, horrible things that they said, that's how you're willing to do it because you just don't feel that you did anything wrong. Your sense of entitlement is so unbelievably massive that everybody owes you, right? He doesn't have to make atonement for the horrible things that he's done and said. He doesn't have to make excuses or even try to walk back even a tiny bit what he said or make apologies or to say, yes, this is what I felt, but I do realize that others in my family might have felt a certain way too. And, I want to make room for that. There's never any of that coming from Harry, and there's never any of that coming from Meghan, because when you have such a strong ego and sense of entitlement, you don't have to walk anything back and you don't have to apologize because what you have experienced, your truth, as they're so fond of saying, that is enough. That is enough to stand in your truth and say what you believe happened and how you were wronged, and that's enough. So that's why we'll never get an apology from them. We will never get any sense from them that maybe, just maybe, they shouldn't have just tried to burn the house down the first time when they left. All they've done for almost 7 years is spin their narrative that the UK is such a horrible, toxic place for both of them. They felt claustrophobic. They felt trapped. They weren't able to do what they wanted, say what they wanted, express themselves the way they wanted. They had no choice, especially after they had their first child. You know, they were so concerned about raising their child in that fishbowl, that evil fishbowl, that they had to get out. How do you go from getting on a plane, filming yourself, calling this exit from your land of birth a freedom flight, right? He was leaving the evil clutches of Britain and he was flying to freedom to America. And we were just all supposed to be so enraptured by this and, you know, cheer him on to the effect that he was going to find safety and security for his family. And he was doing the only thing that he could do at that moment. How do you go from all of that to just walking all that back? I mean, just a month ago, he was telling all of us that the UK was not a safe place for his wife and his children. Remember all those stories late May, June that were all talking about, are they going to come over? Are they not going to come over? Well, the reason why the press was flip-flopping and so many of us out here were talking about that very topic is because that's what Harry wanted us to do. Because I think he was trying to play his hand to see if he was going to win that court privacy battle, which he thought was probably going to give him more ammunition to petition Ravik and also his father, that he really needed that security. And when those two things didn't work out, when he lost that court case, and even when he submitted his own, it was kind of like this inquiry that he funded himself, showing, you know, all the security risks that befell him in the security and why it was so, you know, terrifying and not a good idea for him to bring his family. All that's now gone by the wayside, right? It's like, you cannot make this up. This evil hypocrisy, it's never going to stop from these two. They're scattered. They have no focus. They're literally flying by the seat of their pants. All they do is every single day they wake up and they think, what can I do to gain the most leverage from any given situation I find myself in? How can I paint myself as a victim here in this instance in order to get what I want? So I think that that's why this is happening now. And that's why they're looking like such brazen hypocrites. What has suddenly changed in the UK, living in the UK? What has suddenly changed to bring about this 360 abrupt about face? If you're going to argue that it's a dangerous, vile, toxic fishbowl to live in and dangerous for you and your family security wise, then how can you just completely turn everything around just for the mere convenience of the fact that the money's running out for you and your wife? You guys couldn't make it in Hollywood. All of the endeavors that you have been trying, from her As Ever business to her movie that she tried to promote just this past week called Cookie Queens, which failed miserably at the box office. He's losing court cases. He's going to be on the line now for damages from that court case with the Daily Mail. All these things now are snowballing. So that's why it's incredibly convenient now to just completely forget about and discount all of these things that Harry and Meghan have been telling us for the past 7 years. These warning bells that Harry was so fond of ringing, especially in the last few years, about these security risks to him and especially to Meghan and his family, all highly false, all highly exaggerated, because it was designed to get him what he wanted, which was 24/7 taxpayer funded security whenever he went to the UK. He technically wanted what he had when he was still a working royal, which is 24/7 security no matter where he is in the world. And what would even be better is that he wouldn't have to pay for it, but at least he was trying to get it, at least when he went to the UK, and he wouldn't have to pay for it there. So it's all designed to save them money, and it's also designed to maintain that status, because in his mind, in his egocentric mind, he is worthy of that. He is a blood royal and he is Diana's son and the king's son. So that's why he is therefore entitled to this. So he whined and he moaned and he dragged people to court over privacy and he sued His Majesty's government for security, which he didn't get. He was told no in all of these instances. So now to turn back around to be such a turncoat and so quickly, just know that everything that he was telling us for so long was a big fat lie, highly exaggerated. And now that the tides have turned and they're losing on so many fronts, both professionally and personally, that's why they're coming back, because it suits them. And I'm going to go into a little bit about this angle that so many news outlets are playing right now, which is, the emphasis is they're coming back because it's all about family. It's all about wanting to be close to his father, closer to his family, having a safe environment for his children, all of this garbage, all of this malarkey, because think about it. If it really was about family and reconnecting with family, Meghan would have reconnected with her father after he had his leg amputated last year. Harry would have brought his 2 children to see his father way sooner than that 4-year mark. When Harry and Meghan went back to the UK this past July 2026, and then they also went to Althorpe, remember, but when they brought their 2 children to be reunited with Charles, at that point, it had been 4 years since Charles had seen Archie or Lily. Now, 4 years is a really, really long time, especially when you've got 2 young children involved, and also when you've got someone who's battling terminal cancer like Charles. So if it really was about family reconciliation and strengthening familial bonds, you better rest assured that there would have been visits within that 4-year period, all throughout that 4-year period. And he wouldn't have waited 4 years to bring his children to meet his father. This is such garbage, you guys. Don't buy into any of this. They're coming back because they have no other alternative, because their only currency right now are these titles. She's failing in every way possible with her business ventures. He's losing court cases left and right. He owes money. He can't find a job. I mean, he's technically a chimpo over at Better Up. They are desperate, you guys. This is the only currency they have, and they are playing on Charles's sympathies. I've talked about Charles at length on my channel, and the legacy that I feel that Charles has perpetuated over his lifetime, the way that he dealt with his young wife, Diana, when he first met her, neglecting her emotional needs, engaging with other women affairs during the marriage. Not to say that Diana didn't have her issues and her struggles, but he was a 30-something old male when he married her. She was a 19-year-old virgin, okay? So Charles has always carried on and done exactly what Charles wanted to do. He carried on with Camilla pretty much the entire marriage that he was with Diana. He has done things over the years that, in my opinion, have proven him to be a weak-willed individual that at the end of the day wants to do what he wants to do in order to make himself feel good. And I think what makes Charles feel good at this point in the game is feeling like he is the great peacemaker, the great reconciler. He's going to bring his family back together. He's going to urge William and he's going to urge Harry to get back together and come to some sort of meeting of the minds, because it makes him feel better. William and Harry had their struggles growing up, and they felt in many ways a lot of anger toward their father in how, he treated Diana. They also felt a lot of anger because he was very busy after Diana died. He went right back to working all of his charities and things, but he was also out kind of doing his thing, dating, still seeing Camilla, even though it was on the down low. I mean, it took him a while, almost a decade, to introduce her into polite society, so to speak, and to proclaim that, yes, I am officially with her. She is my partner. But that took a while. But even before those pronouncements were made, he went right back to having Camilla basically spend that time with him after Diana died. So there was never a time when he was separated from her. So he's always indulged himself in that sense. And the boys really did feel that they were kind of abandoned by their dad in a lot of ways. So there's so many things, in my opinion, that Charles feels. So it's that guilt that he's trying to massage, where he feels that he can somehow make things right now by presenting himself as the great reconciler. But I really think the problem here is that Charles doesn't really seem to be making decisions the way a monarch should be making them, the way that a monarch has the ability to look into the future and make the best decisions to preserve the respectability and the integrity of the monarchy. He's just basically looking a few years ahead, maybe most 5 years ahead, not necessarily looking at this from the point of view in the way that you would if you wanted to preserve the legacy of a monarchy. And this move, make no mistake about it, this move of Harry and Meghan insinuating themselves slowly but surely back into the royal fold, and that is what I do feel is their aim, this isn't going to do a whole heck of a lot to help William and Catherine. Essentially what you have are two egoists, Harry and Meghan, who are driven by publicity. They're driven by this false sense of self-righteousness and ego, and they want to get their narrative out there at any and all costs, whether they're in America or whether they're in the United Kingdom. And, you know, think about it. They could have stepped back from royal duty quietly. They could have stayed in the UK. Family and compassion, which is what they have been banging on about for close to 7 years. If, you know, that was really important to them, then they probably wouldn't have left the UK. They would have stayed, and they would have at least been close to his grandmother when she was still alive. God bless her soul. You know, and then once Charles had assumed the throne, they could have been closer to him to allow their two children to grow up closer and have those bonds. But it never was about compassion, and it never was about family. It was about, we're going to go and we're going to make our money, and we're going to monetize these titles the way that we want to, the way that we were not allowed to on British soil. And we're going to do it kicking and screaming as we go on the way out. And we're going to make sure that we burn as many bridges as possible, because in their minds, that really was that proof that they were right. You know, they were making some really, really fiery accusations of racism and all sorts of horrible things. So they felt, you know, self-righteous and in the right in making those pronouncements about their family and the UK public. So if they can do that, then it must be that it happened, right? It must be that everything that they said was true. And they get over there and they don't really get the reception that they wanted. There wasn't this royal sparkle once they got over there. Yeah, they did have some measure of success in the beginning, and they did have, you know, companies like Netflix and companies like Spotify throwing them money, because everyone was kind of like, what can we expect from these two? Once they had just monetized their grievances in the book and the Netflix specials and all these things, once that train kind of lost steam, then the dust was settling, and everyone in these companies and just the public at large was like, okay, well, what else do you have to offer other than throwing your family under the bus? Okay, yeah. We get it. You weren't treated well, right? Whatevs. What else do you have to bring to the table? And the answer soon became abundantly clear. Nothing. So that's why it's so easy for them to walk back. And they're doing it. I mean, when you think about Harry and Meghan, you have to think that in their minds, been talking about ego and this false sense of self-righteousness. And when you have those two really strong in your psyche and in your mind, it is easier to walk back because you still feel right in your conviction. As weak-minded and false as they really are, they don't see them as false. They see them as actually real. You know, they were treated badly, but you know, they probably think this in their mind, they're actually being the better people, walking back, giving the UK public another chance, or giving their so-called horrible, rotten, racist family another chance. This is how people like this think. And this is what we have to be aware of. So just prepare yourself, you guys. There's going to be so much drama coming out of London in the at least 1, 2, 3 year foreseeable future. The only thing that I can think of to make myself and hopefully you feel better about this whole situation is that remember that Meghan and Harry, you guys, are their own worst enemies. They are very petulant, they're very selfish, and they're very brash and rash. They make decisions in the heat of the moment, as most narcissists do. I do believe that Meghan is a malignant narcissist. I think that Harry has touches of it, but that's my opinion. But remember, again, they are their own worst enemies. Give them enough rope to hang themselves and they will eventually hang themselves. They're going to do something to trip up because everything that they told us that drove them out of the UK, was it all a lie? Or did they just kind of come to the realization that, oh, you know, it's not that bad, we can come back? both scenarios make them look like hypocritical idiots. So when they do come back, you better believe that all eyes are really going to be hyper focused on them. If she starts pulling her little publicity games over in the UK, because remember how she told us, oh, you know, her children could never have an existence that would be quiet and peaceful and private in the UK, that school drop-offs would just be just so horrendous with all of this photos and things. It's like, please. She used her children as internet Instagram fodder for her grid for how many years now? I don't care if it was the back of the head. You can't bang on about privacy and how she's so afraid of children unaliving themselves and people using their children as social currency and then monetize her children the way that she has. So just keep that in mind. She is going to slip up somehow, some way and make herself look even more like a huge hypocrite. And same with Harry. I mean, somehow, some way, he's going to slip up. He's going to get selfish again. He's going to get petulant again. He's going to start fights. He's going to continue to try to drive a wedge between the king and Prince William because this is all he knows how to do. He's not content with just hanging back and being a supporter of his brother. And if anything, if he were smart, he would be happy to be a spare because he kind of has the best of both worlds, or he had when he was a full-time working royal. You know, you do have the best of both worlds. You're able to support the monarch in any way, shape, or form that you need to in order to help the family and help the monarch, but yet you're also able to take a step back from that pressure that is always ever present for whoever is sitting on the throne. I mean, if anything, that's kind of like a gift horse. And Harry, true to fashion, is no stranger to looking a gift horse in the mouth, right? Nothing is ever good enough for him. William got more sausages than him at breakfast, okay, y'all? Like, this is the mentality of who we are dealing with. So mark my words, some way, somehow, these two are going to trip up. And what's sad now, though, is that unlike when they left, now they have two children. And they have two children that, in my opinion, they're going to try to monetize to the hilt. When Archie was born, Meghan and Harry told us that they had no inclination to give him a title. They wanted a private life. Well, that really changed really quick when they really saw how they weren't getting their way. Can't make this up. So I do feel bad in a sense for these kids. I feel bad for exactly how Meghan and Harry are going to use them as pawns in their little chess game in order to secure themselves more leverage and more positioning within the family as long as Charles is alive. How this all is going to play out once Charles passes, you know, so many of us are saying that we know, we can see that William has a drastically different temperament than his father. Hopefully he will be able to do something about these two. And as we saw with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, titles can be stripped. So let's hope that within this time frame between when the king passes and William ascends, there's probably going to be something that's going to happen that's going to be egregious enough for William to look at the situation and say, enough is enough. Titles are stripped. You are constitutionally irrelevant. And also keep in mind, the older that George and Charlotte and Louis get, that's exactly what's going to happen. Those two are going to be 100% constitutionally irrelevant. You guys, I've got an article pulled up here that I wanted to go over with you before we end the video. And it's just so indicative of such garbage that we see floating around out here. And it's a piece in the Telegraph from Alexander Larman. Get your sick buckets. Welcome back, Harry. You might even save the monarchy. And the byline says, many will scoff at the unexpected move, but there is a constitutional reason why we should be grateful for the Duke of Sussex's return. I'll spare you, okay? I won't read the entire thing, but you know, he's not entirely unaware of all the horrible, rotten, evil things that Harry and Meghan have done. He talks about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are not expected to resume their previous status as working royals, but inevitably, as two of the most high-profile figures in the country, their every move will be scrutinized and discussed. Harry also knows that, after the failure of his privacy case at the High Court against Associated Newspapers, he will be fair game in the pages of the Daily Mail, as will his wife. And Mr. Alexander Larman continues. And he says, undoubtedly, this is a consideration that he has weighed, Harry, up while making his decision to return, as well as the knowledge that neither has exactly endeared themselves either to the royal family or the public with many of their self-aggrandizing statements or television shows since they decided to quit the firm. Well, at least he's acknowledging that. And then he continues, if Harry and Meghan want their new life in Britain to be a success and to claw back the goodwill that they forfeited 6 years ago, then they would be well advised to comport themselves with a mixture of humility and grace, even if the headlines that they receive are not always to their liking. Practically, the first thing that Harry must do is to make amends to his estranged brother, the Prince of Wales. Sorry guys, my leg's asleep. Even if the private groveling that he must do sits at odds with his self-proclaimed victim status. So in a way, it seems like this guy's kind of got Harry's number, but the way that he closes out this article is what got my panties in a bunch. So he's saying, and there is also a constitutional reason why we should be grateful for Harry's return too. The Regency Act of 1937 dictates that in the event of the heir to the throne being a minor, the person closest in line over the age of 21 who is permanently domiciled in Britain should become regent until they come of age. In the exceptionally unlikely event that ill fortune should befall both the King and the Prince of Wales, this would now mean that Harry would serve as regent until such time as Prince George turned 18. While there might be howls of protest at such a turn of affairs, remember that the alternative, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor becoming regent, something that he is still constitutionally able to do unless he is barred from the line of succession by Act of Parliament, is many, many times worse. Who knows, one day we might even be able to say that Prince Harry saved the monarchy. Well, you guys, just the fact, okay, that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Harry are still in positions to become regents is absurd on its face. And why Charles hasn't, constitutionally removed, at the very least, Andrew, boggles the mind, but it does give you some insight into the mind of the man that is king, the weak mind. Unfortunately, I do think Charles means well, but he's not behaving like a king. He's behaving like a softy grandfather who is allowing his son to manipulate him. But I did come across something in my research after I read the end of that article, and I was just like spitting nails, and it's actually really good because yes, the thought of Harry now being permanently domiciled in the UK not only will probably afford him a lot more taxpayer funded security, which I think was also a big driving force for this move, because he wants what he wants and he's going to get it if he is residing in the UK and spending the majority of his time there. But just the fact that Harry is still constitutionally able to assume role of regent. God forbid if something happened to William in the event of George not being 18, that is enough to just make you want to just go climb the walls, right? I'm getting so fired up. But I did find something that's going to ease your mind, because it definitely eased mine. So that Regency Act of 1937 that columnist Alexander Larman was talking about, this is what the law actually says, and I'm looking at my notes. The Regency Act of 1937 explicitly states that if a monarch ascends the throne under the age of 18, the regent automatically becomes the next adult over the age of 21 in the line of succession who is permanently domiciled in the UK. And right now, that person is Prince Harold of the realm, okay? And some people are like, well, what about Catherine? What about Princess Catherine? She would make a wonderful regent. And there's going to be some that you're going to hear that are going to say, well, she cannot, and here's why. But there is a bright light here, so just hold on. So because Catherine is not in the line of succession, because she's a royal spouse, not a blood royal, she is legally disqualified from serving as regent, as the law does state in the Regent Act of 1937 that I just read you. Now, when Harry lived in California, remember, he was disqualified officially because he wasn't permanently domiciled in the UK, but now that he is, he legally reactivates his eligibility to become regent if those conditions are met that we've just gone over. Now, in my mind, I'm like, heck to the no, Catherine, 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 right? And there's going to be people, again, that are going to say, well, according to the letter of the law, she can't do it. But here is where that is not entirely true. And there has been precedents for other people other than the next person who is constitutionally able to step up, like a herald. So in 1840, Parliament passed a unique one-off Regency Act whenever a crisis arose. And one of those crises was in 1840, when a young Queen Victoria was expecting her first child, and Parliament passed a specific bill naming her husband, Prince Albert, as the sole regent if she died in childbirth. And he wasn't the blood royal, he was the spouse. He was a German cousin, an aristocrat, right? But more importantly, and here's the kicker, in 1953, Queen Elizabeth II explicitly requested an amendment to this law, the Regency Act of 1937. And at the time, if she had died while Prince Charles was still under the age of 18, then the Regency would automatically pass to her sister Margaret. However, in 1953, the Queen successfully petitioned Parliament to pass the Regency Act of 1953. And that decreed that if Charles became king as a minor, his father, Prince Philip, would step in as the regent instead of Margaret. So there is precedence if something tragic were to happen today. So many of us I know that follow the royals and know about this kind of stuff. That is one of the things that lurks in the back of our minds, kind of like Michael Myers lurking in the shadows on Halloween night. You know, you're like, no, what the heck? So we just have to remember that if a tragedy did occur and William became king before turning 18 in July 2031, remember that Prince Harry technically, as of right now, is no longer a working royal. Yes, but even if he was, you better believe that Parliament would act swiftly, because public sentiment is so deeply divided over members of the royal family like Andrew, like Harry, that the government would not allow a situation to even occur that would allow him to control everything. That is my opinion. And I think that based on this exact precedent that her late great Majesty Queen Elizabeth II set in 1953, that's exactly what I think would happen if a new crisis arose. So if something happened to William, I do pray to God and hope and pray that Parliament, and I do think that they would, given public sentiment around Harry and Meghan, I do think that they would rewrite the statute, get in there and get it on paper to explicitly state that Catherine, the Princess of Wales, or potentially, don't forget, there's also Edward or Anne, if she would still be alive, they would name one of those three as the official regent, stripping Harry of the role regardless of where he's living or what his status is, whether it's part-time working, full-time working, or not at the time. Something to ease your mind through all of this. I know it's rough. It is a rough pill to swallow, but you guys, this is just life. Thus is life. You know, these things are going to happen, especially when you're dealing with people of great wealth, of great privilege, and soft power, like Harry and Meghan, like Charles, like the royal family. You have to remember that at the end of the day, these people will do everything they can to preserve, protect, and maintain their own. And that's what's most important to Charles right now. That's what the driving force is, his beloved baby boy. However, I hope that you took a little bit of, reprieve in the idea that because the public really doesn't like these two, hopefully the way that the political winds would be, waving at the time, that they wouldn't allow this man to step in and become regent if there was a crisis going on in the monarchy. Like I said, you guys, a really, really rough pill to swallow. And it's hard, especially when you feel like as a person in just your normal day-to-day life, you're doing everything you can to be a good, honest, upright person. And you're looking at situations like what we're seeing involving Harry and Meghan. And it's so hard not to get worked up and to get riled and think to yourself, why is this happening? Why does it always seem like the wicked prosper no matter what? I mean, it can be infuriating. And it is hard, but that's just when we have to. I mean, I don't care if I sound naive in saying this, but as a Catholic Christian, I have to. It's at times like this when it's so frustrating and infuriating when you see people like them out there and it seems like they're prospering and it seems like they're winning and it seems like they're falling into crap and coming up smelling like a rose again time after time. At that point, more than ever, you just have to really just focus inward and just try to be the best that you can be. You know what I mean? Look at Harry, look at Meghan as foils to your own life. Like, what do they do that's horrible and rotten that we sometimes do in our own lives? And how can we look at them as a model of what not to do, of how not to act? Because at the end of the day, they're going to do what they're going to do. And at the end of this life, they will have to stand in judgment for what they've done, just like how we all have to. And, you know, hopefully, somehow, some way, maybe there is a silver lining to all of this. Maybe they'll have a change of heart. They'll have their own conversion story. And maybe all of this will end. Unfortunately, I don't really see that happening. I don't really see Harry and Meghan as the self-reflective, apologetic type that is about contrition and wanting to be better people. But we don't have the last say on that. Only the Lord above does. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is when it's frustrating looking at them, thinking, why are these wicked people and their wicked deeds, why does it always seem like they prosper? More than ever, we just have to turn that around and focus on, okay, what are we doing? How can we be better? And how can we continue to pray for people like that? Because it is a tragedy. Like, they are walking tragedies. Everything that they've experienced, everything that they've supposedly talked about that they've experienced, when you look at the facts and you look at the timelines, it really is a tragedy of their own making, because they are unwilling to listen to other people, because they are unwilling to apologize. They are unwilling to just see the forest for the trees and to figure out, you know what, these things that I'm complaining about, they're all self-imagined. They're all brought about because of ego and because of this toxic self-introspective game, this loop. They're almost like a broken record in the way that they're constantly ruminating in their heads about every way that they've been wronged. It's so selfish and it's so self-introverted to the point of being toxic, and it just destroys lives and everyone around them. And we can look at their bad example as something that we never want to mirror and do in our own lives, because look what happens. Look how families break apart. Look how people suffer. There have been people that have been bullied in their wake, people that have been dropped, people, you know, they do these horrible things, and it doesn't seem like there's any sense of justice to it. But there is. There's going to be justice at the end of this life for us all. All we can do in the meantime is try to be the best that we can be and continue to pray for those two fools, because I don't want to make a video and just talk about everything that they do that pisses us off, but not really bring about any type of silver lining, so to speak, or just lesson that we could garner. And yeah, it's good to blow off steam and to point out injustice, but you know, life is messy and there's so many things going wrong. And yes, it's important to point out hypocrisy of people like Harry and Meghan, especially when they are so loud. They have the public stage and the public microphone, and they have been yelling the loudest for over a decade. And it's important to call out hypocrisy. It's important to call out lies and half-truths and omissions, and they're guilty of all of it. And it can be hurtful to constantly hear stuff about these two, but we have to remember, though, that God is in charge and he is paying attention. When I think about William and Catherine, and you know, there was a few things that I wanted to say about them that I kind of got sidetracked in the video, but the main thing that I did want to say about William and Catherine is they are really the picture of what it means to be a model Christian couple and move throughout the world, in the sense that they have been brutally attacked. They have had horrible things said about them by Harry and Meghan, yet they have not responded. They have maintained their decorum and respectability, and they haven't stooped to Harry and Meghan's level. And I think we can all, even with this horrible news about them coming back, Harry and Meghan, to the UK, we can all breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief, because I don't think that the decorum, respectability, and class that William and Catherine have displayed ever since they got married and throughout their whole marriage. I don't think that the way that they conduct themselves is going to stop anytime soon. They are going to continue to be wonderful representatives of the UK government. They are representative of history, of legacy, and of just grace and handling yourself under pressure when you've got all of these grenades being thrown at you, just not paying attention to all the garbage and focusing on what's important. Duty, family, history, legacy. That's what William and Catherine are all about. And they're going to be and continue to be shining stars in the family. And they're going to continue to be the reprieve that so many of us out here that are watching this play out in real time, that we're going to desperately need. And I just pray for them. I pray that they will be able to remain strong once those two get over back on UK soil, because they are master manipulators. They are perpetual victims, and they are people, unfortunately, that you cannot trust. But what makes it even more incredibly sad is that they're family members. So I do pray that William and Catherine are able to navigate their family and their lives and their upcoming positions in the family, because these are shark-infested waters that they're now finding themselves in. And hopefully everything will turn out okay. It's just a lot to take in, a lot to digest. Let me know down in the comments below, what did you think of when you first heard that Harry and Meghan were slinking back to the UK with their tails between their legs? What did you think of? For me, it was just thinking about Meghan in her, the next iteration she's going to have of the poop hat, how she's going to show up, flashing the veneers, insinuating herself. Did you think that Charles knew about this way before this past Sunday? I definitely believe that he knew. Definitely believe that this plan was starting to get ironed out last month when Harry and Meghan made their little trip to the UK. I definitely think that Harry was basically grooming his dad for this decision, probably even as far out as last fall when he met with his dad. And what do you think about the whole William and Catherine element to all of this? How do you think that they are going to deal with this news? Do you think that they're going to keep Harry and Meghan at a respectable arm's length and just be gracious and invite them to, big things and main events? I think they will. I do think that William, being the smart man that he is going to approach Harry and Meghan with a Michael Corleone of the Godfather type mindset. Your friend's close, but your enemy's closer. And it's really sad to have to even say that, to characterize Harry, his own brother, as an enemy. But unfortunately, Harry's behavior, best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. And Harry has proven himself to be a traitor and an enemy to his brother and to his brother's future reign. Harry threw his brother under the bus, make no mistake about it. So I do think that William is going to be smart about his dealings with Harry, but just let me know what you guys think about that down in the comments below. And like the video if you liked it, share the video, and if there is a hype button underneath this video, especially if you're watching on a mobile phone, please hit that hype button. It helps the channel so much. I have been hovering this close to 31K on my channel. It's been kind of going at a snail's pace to get that up to 31K. So if you can subscribe if you haven't, I would love it. So love it. That's what kind of happens out in the YouTube universe. If you kind of take a little bit of a break and step back for a little bit, for whatever reason, the algorithm kind of dumps you to the back of the line and kind of forgets about you. That's just a way of the beast. I mean, everything has to be fed into the algorithm constantly, but I'm a one-woman show here, you guys. I don't have anyone helping me. I definitely do not have a producer like some of these podcasts that you watch out there that are researching segments, writing sound bites for the segments, giving people cards and things to read. There's none of that. I do my own research. I write and make the outlines for my videos. I'm filming them and I'm editing them. Oh, and keep an eye out. I am releasing very soon chapter 17 of Child Bride, the untold story of Priscilla Beaulieu Presley. You guys, it's getting good. In this next episode, Priscilla and Elvis are reunited after almost 2 years. In March 1960, Elvis left Priscilla in Germany, and now it's 2 years later. They are reunited in Los Angeles, and all of their expectations of one another and the realities of one another come crashing to a head. This is a good one. So yeah, chapter 17 of Child Bride, keep an eye out for it. So yeah, give this mama some grace. Give me a like, give me a share, give me a hype, and subscribe. I love you so very much, and I will talk to you all very soon. Bye.
I can't see a world in which I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point.
We are on the freedom flight. We are leaving Canada and we are headed to Los Angeles.